Let's rewind the clock. Before there was a corpse, there was a life full of sin. The 1920s. Americans called it the Roaring Twenties. After World War I, America rose like a young, arrogant giant. Factories ran at full capacity. New inventions were born every day. The radio, the Ford Model T cinema. For the first time in history, ordinary people could buy luxury goods. But there was a problem. Their wages didn't grow as fast as productivity. How do you sell goods to people who can't afford them? The financial system invented a devil disguised as an angel. Consumer credit. Buy now, pay later. A concept that sounds so smooth. You could drive that new car home today and pay for it over 3 years. You could listen to that new radio and pay for it with future income. The whole country began living on debt. But the most dangerous debt wasn't in refrigerators or cars. It was on the New York Stock Exchange. At that time, a new mechanism turned the stock market from a place to raise capital into the world's largest legal casino. It was called buying on margin. Picture this. You have $10. You want to buy a stock worth $100. Normally, you can't. But with margin, the broker lends you the other $90. You only need to put down $10. If the stock goes up to $110, you sell it, pay back the $90 loan, and pocket the $20 profit. You just doubled your money with a tiny increase. It felt like magic. Everyone felt like a genius. From the shoeshine boy to the secretary, anyone could be a Wall Street tycoon. But no one told them about the other side of this double-edged sword. If the stock drops from 100 to 90, your capital is wiped out. The broker will immediately sell your stock to recover the loan. That is the margin call, the phone call from the Grim Reaper. By 1929, for every $5 lent in America, $2 were used to buy stocks. The entire economy wasn't built on production, but on a tower of paper, IOUs, stacked on top of each other, a skyscraper built on quicksand. September 1929. The market starts to cough. Stock prices fluctuate wildly. The players, the real sharks, began to smell blood. Joseph Kennedy, father of the future president JFK, pulled all his capital out of the market at this time. Why? He told a famous story. One morning, while getting his shoes shined, the shoeshine boy was polishing his boots while giving him enthusiastic tips on which stocks to buy. Kennedy walked away and told himself, when a shoeshine boy knows how to play the stock market, that is when the market has no room left for smart people. But the crowd wasn't smart. The crowd was blinded by greed. When the market dipped slightly in September, they saw it as an opportunity to buy the dip. They borrowed more money. They mortgaged their homes. They poured gasoline onto a smoldering fire. What did the economists of the time do? They offered reassurance. Irving Fisher, the most famous economist in America, made a statement that went down in the history of ignorance. Stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. Remember that quote, permanently high plateau. Whenever you hear an expert say, this time is different, be careful. It is never different. October 23rd, 1929, the day before the storm, the market closed with a sharp decline. An uneasiness crept into the air. Phones began to ring incessantly at brokerage offices. Margin calls were being sent out. Small investors had to deposit more cash by the next morning, or their assets would be liquidated. That night, thousands of people didn't sleep. They calculated their ledgers. They realized they had no cash left. All their wealth was in stocks, and the only way to get cash to pay the debt was to sell the stocks. A death loop had been triggered. Thursday, October 24th, 1929, the day history calls Black Thursday. Early morning, the exchange opens. As soon as the bell rings, chaos erupts. No one wants to buy. Everyone wants to sell. Sell, sell, sell at any price. Screams echoed across the floor. Men in expensive suits, usually so composed, were now tearing at each other, screaming into telephones, waving their hands frantically. But the scariest thing wasn't the noise. It was the silence of the machines. At that time, stock prices were transmitted via a paper strip called the ticker tape. The machine would print the current trading price for people across America to see. But on that morning, the volume of sell orders was so massive, so relentless, that the ticker machines couldn't keep up. By 11 a.m., the ticker tape was lagging 1 hour behind reality. Imagine the horror. You're in Chicago. You look at the tape and see your stock is at $100. You think you're safe. But in reality, in New York, it has already crashed to $60. You are trading in the dark. You are driving a car at top speed while blindfolded. Fear turned into primal panic. Rumors spread faster than fire. People whispered that investors were jumping from high-rise buildings in Manhattan. Crowds gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange, faces pale, staring at the closed doors like they were waiting for a death sentence. By noon, the market seemed ready to collapse completely. But then a glimmer of hope. Richard Whitney, vice president of the exchange, representing the biggest banks on Wall Street, walked onto the floor. He strode confidently to the U.S. Steel trading post. He loudly placed an order to buy 10,000 shares at a price higher than the market. It was a symbolic act. The banking tycoons were stepping in to save the market. They were pumping money to stop the bleeding. The crowd cheered. Confidence returned. The market recovered slightly by the end of the day. People exhaled. They thought the nightmare was over. The newspapers the next morning read, "Banks halt crisis." But they were wrong. It wasn't salvation. It was just the final dose of painkiller before the patient took their last breath. The weekend passed in extreme tension. On Monday, the market dropped again. And then the true day of reckoning arrived. Tuesday, October 29th, 1929. Black Tuesday. If Thursday was panic, Tuesday was a slaughter. This time, no Richard Whitney appeared. No banks stepped in to save the day. The tycoons realized the hole was too deep. No amount of money could fill it. They quietly retreated, leaving the market to freefall. Blue-chip stocks, the icons of American industry, fell vertically. General Electric lost 50% of its value. DuPont lost half. Billions of dollars evaporated in hours. Not paper money burning, but asset value, trust, and the future of millions of families vanishing into the void. Brokers collapsed weeping on the floor. Investors stared at blank screens. They didn't just lose money. They lost everything. Their homes, their cars, their life savings. The margin debt had turned into handcuffs, locking their lives away. When the closing bell rang on Tuesday afternoon, the jazz age was over. The roaring 20s went silent. Wall Street was plunged into darkness, both literally and figuratively. The aftermath of the 1929 murder didn't stop at Wall Street. It spread like a plague. When the stock market crashed, people panicked and ran to the banks to withdraw their money. But the banks had no money. The banks had used people's deposits to speculate on stocks or lent it to investors to play margin. Banks collapsed in waves. Millions of people lost their life savings, even though they had never bought a single stock. Businesses couldn't get loans and had to close. Workers were fired. Unemployment skyrocketed from 3% to 25%. Men who used to wear suits to offices were now standing in long lines, begging for a bowl of soup. That was the Great Depression, the darkest decade of the 20th century. So who was the real killer? Was it the greed of the investors? Was it the loose regulations? Or was it the manipulation of the banks? The answer is all of them. It was a crime with many accomplices. But the deadliest weapon was still financial leverage and the illusion of liquidity. What do we learn from this bloody file? Lesson 1. When everyone believes the market can only go up, that is when it is about to crash. Consensus is the enemy of profit. Lesson 2. Leverage, margin, is a double-edged sword. It helps you get rich fast, but it kills you even faster. In a crisis, cash is king, and debt is a death sentence. Lesson 3. Experts and central banks are not gods. They don't know what will happen either. And when the ship sinks, they will be the first ones on the lifeboats, leaving you with the wreck. Now, look into the mirror. The year 2029 is approaching. Where do we stand? Look at the numbers today. Global debt is at an all-time high. Consumer credit is exploding. Investment apps on your phone make borrowing margin easier than ordering a pizza. The AI craze, crypto, real estate. Is it any different from the radio and automobile craze of 1920? We are still dancing on the edge of a volcano. The music is still good. The wine is still strong. But listen closely. Can you hear the ice cracking beneath your feet? The 1929 case file is closed, but its clues are scattered everywhere in the modern economy. The invisible killer is still lurking, waiting for the moment to strike again. I'm not here to spread fear. I'm here to hand you a flashlight in the dark, so that when history repeats itself, and it certainly will, you won't be a victim. You will be an observer, standing outside the panic, and maybe finding opportunity in the ashes. This is Financial Noir. The investigation has just begun. The next file will take us to an even more sophisticated crime, a heist that happened in 1971, where the world's currency was switched in a sleight of hand. If you want the truth, leave your thoughts on today's crime scene in the comments below. Subscribe so you don't miss the next clue. Good luck in the dark.